People who have worked a convention, such as Comic-Con, Wizard World, Anime Expo, PAX, E3, etc. What is your most interesting story about it? I was a GRT, guest relations team. We get the big names to panels and do other stuff they need at WonderCon many years ago. One of my big name folks was Robert Kirkman. He was very nice. The usual thing you try to do is take back routes if possible. It keeps the fanboy thing to a minimum. This time though we have to cross the convention floor. So we are walking along talking and people know who he is. So an occasional person will ask a question or want an autograph. It wasn't too bad. We get almost to the spot and 5 guys in Mandalorian armor come walking up and ask me for my autograph and a picture. So I ask Robert if he minds. He doesn't. So I obliged. We start walking and he asks what was that. I tell him I used to work on a cartoon with a small but very nice and dedicated fan group. He just laughed and asked which one. I told him which and that was the end of it. Later he joked that it was the only time he's had someone escorting him stop to sign an autograph. When I was in high school I worked at the dealer's hall at FanImeCon in downtown San Jose. I worked the entrance of dealer's hall, which meant I checked the badges of everyone entering to make sure they had paid for the event. During one shift this 6 feet 5 inches rotund bald man wearing a backpack came up to me in the middle of a tiring shift and asked if I wanted to be clomped. I had zero idea what that was and I was quite exhausted, but he seemed friendly, so I left out a quiet yes. With almost no effort he swiped me up in a bear hug and just kinda gently swayed me from side to side while humming. He kinda smelled like BO, but I was 17 at the time and no one had picked me up in several years, so it was somewhat calming. I have mixed feelings about the whole thing. I've got a story that belongs here. Back in January of 2014 I was working as a production assistant at CES in Las Vegas. The company I worked for at the time had many national and international clients. However, this specific show was with Samsung. During CES many electronics companies hold targeted press conferences for 100 to 150 select members of the media, ranging from newspaper reporters to bloggers, and will launch new global products. While Samsung had many new products launching in 2014, the show pony was their line of curved LED TVs. Samsung's team had invited a few high-profile guests to take part in the conference in order to promote the latest and greatest from the brand, as is typical of these shows. Among the guest speakers were Samsung's EVP of North America Justin Ziano, Mark Cuban, and Michael Bay. Mr. Bay was slotted as the keynote to introduce the new curved LED monitors, touting their superiority in viewing quality and immersion etc, especially while viewing any of the Transformers movies. His spot was built to take just under 6 minutes long, and prior to the beginning of the show we held 2 full rehearsals. Mr. Bay chose not to attend either. Showtime. Mr. Bay is introduced by the EVP of North America, walks out onto the stage, and is noticeably nervous, disoriented and flustered. 15 seconds into his spot, he melts down. He fumbles, panics, curses, then walks off stage in front of a room packed with press. I'm backstage with the associate and executive producers and we are just quietly staring at each other, mouths agape, stunned at what we had just witnessed. As soon as Mr. Bay exits stage right, Mark Cuban comes out of his dressing room laughing loudly and casually shouts, "I've never seen anything like that before. You better cut out of here," with his slight Texan accent. Mortified, the other producers and myself scramble to push to the next section of the show, but at that point the room was feverishly posting video/content of Mr. Bay's mental break and oddball exit. Michael Bay's reasoning for the mishap was a malfunctioning teleprompter, which I can assure you is entirely untrue. I watched him collapse in real time, all the while the prompters were running flawlessly. He was escorted by his team from the backstage area out to a driver, disappearing quickly after the incident. I've worked on many shows before and since, and I've never seen anything quite like that display of jacassery. We all ended up feeling sorry for him. I'm sure his partnership with Samsung ended there, that day. Video, potato/potato apologies, https://www.youtube.com/watch, v=r4rmi1i268. TL. Dr. I watched Michael Bay meltdown during a press conference from backstage. I worked a convention for my college. We had Richard Epker come with his fiancée. He was very nice, very polite, and very expensive. His fiancée, on the other hand, she was a vegetarian, and when we mentioned there weren't many vegetarian options, she asked we go a half hour away to get her gourmet vegetarian food. We told her we didn't quite have the manpower to allow 3 people to escort her to get the food and asked if we could perhaps get her Subway. She begrudgingly agreed and then complained that the sandwich looked weird, threw it out, and then complained she was hungry. Richard was awesome though. When I took him back to the airport he asked me about the synagogues nearby. We talked about growing up Jewish, and he said he hoped that my spiritual journey went well. Really cool dude. He also complimented my name and told me I seemed like a good kid. Really neat dude. We also have Cabo every year. I'm graduated, so I suppose they do. And guys, meet him. He's the sweetest, nicest, most genuine person I've ever met, and I deeply and truly consider him a friend. He's so open to listening to people when they have issues, and he's so willing to help. Nicest dude. Otherwise, we had to get FBI background checks and take how to spot a pedophile training. That was awful. We checked the bathrooms every hour for sex or pedophilia, or both, too. That was weird. TLDR, BlizzCon was saved by tape. At BlizzCon last year we kept having entire gaming pods go offline. This happened because excited players accidentally stepped on the power strips under the table. The power strips were dangling under the tables due to a last minute requirement from security that the networking and power equipment not be within visible reach of the players. After the con closed on the first night somebody went out and bought all the gaff tape they could find, and a veritable duct tape army of con staff taped all that shit up off the floors under the tables. The resulting tape ball during teardown was awesome. I do comics for kids live on Twitch, completely indie style. I've been exhibiting at Fan Expo for 3 shows in a row, third one is in September. Being behind a booth in Artist's Alley is so much different than just walking around. There are lots of different stories and such that I can think of, but the first one that I always recall is concerning selling original sketches. To keep myself busy behind the booth, I would sit there and draw little cartoon sketches of different characters and put them in a bin marked pay what you want sketches. I thought it was a good idea, and ultimately, that's where the majority of my profit came from. Anyhow, I had spent a lot longer on this one picture, close to an hour. Generally I can do a decent little drawing in about 10 minutes, and it was a drawing of grown-up Groot next to a baby Groot. My Groot sketches were really popular. I sold something like 50 of them over the course of the weekend, but this one had significantly more effort. So most of the sketches made anywhere from $2 to $25 each, and it was neat to see reactions of people when they realized they could walk away with very affordable original drawings. I kept the bills inside the jar that people paid into and made it so I couldn't see how much they were spending. It made it easier on them to figure it out for themselves. I got a lot of how much should I pay, and I always made sure to tell them that it's completely up to them. Whenever someone would pay with change, as soon as they walked away, I would take the change from the jar, just to see. Lots of loonies and twinnies, Canada, but people were pretty fair with the prices. This one guy comes by and grabs the big Groot picture and another sketch, and gets really excited about them. Ecstatic, even. So he reaches into his pocket, and puts some money in the jar. He walks away, happy as a clam. I wait a minute, and then check the jar. 4 pennies. 4 pennies. Again, I reiterate, it's pay what you want, so I shouldn't complain, but really, what kind of person does that? I kept the pennies, and they sit in the top drawer of my drawing table, and I look every once in a while at them, after spending 200 unpaid manners making my newest comic, or waiting for backers to participate in my Kickstarter, and I'm reminded of how people don't always understand that lowballing someone who spends their life doing this stuff really does kinda blow. But I'm going to keep the pay what you want bin, because it's a very interesting experience to see people try to figure out what to pay me. It results in a lot of great conversations and sales. Been selling art at conventions for a number of years. There are way too many stories, but I'll try to be brief with some that stick out to me. Vern Troyer speeding through the convention floor on a small scooter with a small mass of people slowly walking after him. As a small Asian girl, a ridiculous amount getting hit on. When I was 14, this large older white dude in his mid-20s kept finding me and talking to me about hentai and his favorite kinds. At one point my friends and I just ran away. Hotel room orgies. Some big name Vazza huge pervs. Taking advantage of their young insecure nerdy fans. Saying really fucked shit to them. Inviting them back to their hotels. Groping them. Friend got hired by Guillermo del Toro after Guillermo del Toro approached his art table. Was sitting outside a convention when a girl came up to me barefoot and holding a kitten and let me pet it. When we asked why she was barefooted, she just said fuck shoes and walked away. Atomic lollipop. The whole convention is a fucking shit show. It's basically a convention run by rave kids. They rented out the Ontario Science Centre and had Prozac play, a semi-popular Canadian 90s band, but barred pretty much the entire convention from entering. Tickets were also $70 that day. Lots of drugs and booze and underage kids passing out, and ambulance and vomit fucking everywhere. This might be the third time they've gotten banned from a venue. Free hug lines. One convention I went to, you had to walk through this parking lot to get to the other side. A line of people were across it forcing free hugs. Everyone got hugged by a sweaty bare-chested Sephiroth. Also I'm really short, so I got a face full of the good stuff. People fucking under a blanket in broad daylight in a packed convention. And my favorite. Made friends with some nice random people in line for racks, then wandered the hotels near by looking for a party. First was this really awkward party in a hotel lobby, ended within half an hour of us getting there. I searched forums and stuff and took a chance on another party in another hotel. This party was nuts. Everyone was just giving us booze like it was water. Some guy pulls out a huge bag of weed brownies and hands it to us. Another dude rolls up on his skateboard and offers us acid and weed. They came card sleeves instead of dime baggers. Another guy has this backpack thing full of some liquid and gives us this speech, and he sounded like a drill sergeant giving us a sermon. No idea what he said, but I just heard the words coconut and Everclear. And had people get down on their knees and had this hose thing he used to pump down people's throats. Also the liquid was white. And he was shirtless. Later that night I slept like a baby. Apparently my buddy who took the Everclear jizz stuff saw the sun rise from the bathroom. You Americans are the best. Spent something like 6 years on staff for Annam Central. Shinichi Watanabe, Akanabashin, was a regular guest for Asan, and he really wanted to be con security. They gave him his own security vest and radio and he just had a blast running around the service corridors when he wasn't needed for a panel. There was the time we were breaking down on Sunday evening and over the radio comes up, "Where's the pallet jack?" Last I saw it the Power Rangers had it. Last I saw them, they were staging a fight on the parking garage roof. There was the time someone was cosplaying as the merchant from Resident Evil 4, but the inside of his trench coat was filled with lacy panties. There was the time one of the hotel restaurants set off the fire alarms, and we had to evacuate the entire hotel. That was like 7 years ago, and I'm still glad that happened early on Friday morning, and not on Saturday afternoon or anything like that. The time someone decided to go to the dance wearing a towel, and nothing but a towel. And so many ambulances. I know a guy who is a fairly well-known voiceover artist. Somehow his first con, he felt like it wasn't right to charge people to take pictures with him. He's enjoying himself for a couple of days, and security came up and told him he had to charge for pictures because Mickey Rooney was there and was pissed about him not charging, making Rooney look bad. So he starts charging $10. He's amazed at all the money he's making. Then security came back and told him that he had to charge at least $20 because Rooney was complaining again. At the end of the weekend he had a literal bag of cash on him. He said he felt like a gangster. I ran a table with my dad at a convention in Atlanta, selling his artwork. I was walking the floor, handing out some advertisements of his artwork/website to attract people to the dealer art room, when I suddenly see this mangy dude run through the crowd faster than I'd ever seen anyone run through a con. I stopped to stare, and then, right behind him, this massive dude dressed as the Kingpin, Spider-Man, ran around the corner after him, yelling for him to stop. Right after him came stormtroopers. And then, right after them came security. Never did find out what happened, but I often laugh at the image of all these strange folk running after this guy. My boyfriend's uncle makes a living working at conventions, running Fernando's engravings. He does hand-stamped engraved stainless steel rings in a variety of languages. I've gotten really good at listing off after working the stand with him a few times. Old Hieroglyphian and Arabesh are the newest two. Was really good at AwesomeCon since Peter was there. I think the coolest thing I've seen so far is the 223 couples who have come up to the stand and ordered their engagement rings from us. It's such a cute, nerdy little thing and I love it. 9/10 times so far, they do long engravings in Elvish, since the whole consonants above vowels thing makes it easier to fit more. It depends on what types of interesting stories you're looking for. I've worked at these types of events as an event planner and an exhibitor, so it depends on what angle you're looking for. My spouse is pretty well-known comic book artist, works for the big companies on the big titles, so he gets a lot of people coming by to get autographs, pictures, etc. There's always at least 2 to 3 people per convention who want advice on how to get famous and get furious when he doesn't have a shortcut to offer. He always advises everyone to hone their craft, etc. and no one wants to hear that and start yelling and cussing and basically accusing him of trying to keep them out because he's jealous of their talent, etc. One guy got so belligerent that security stepped in, all because he wouldn't set a meeting with editorial for this random guy to have his portfolio reviewed, which, BTW, is not something that the artists have any control over. If you're looking for a job in comics, don't badger the artists. I've also seen some dumb stuff that could be considered interesting if you know/care who the artists are. Lots of guys sleeping under the tables in their booths because they're too drunk. Fist fights on the convention floor between famous artists. Tons of infidelities, drunken public escapades, etc. A recent one that my husband was telling again just the other day was from a convention last year. A woman came up, cradling a baby in her arms. The woman was cosplaying as part of a famous super duo and the baby was dressed as the other half of the duo. My husband worked on the book that the characters were from, so the woman came up to get her books signed and show off her costumes. So we are complimenting the detail, etc. She made them herself and she turns the baby to show us the front of the costume. The whole time, she's very ginger and whispering and gently rocking the baby in her arms because the baby is asleep and my husband comments on how cute the baby is and the woman starts going on and on and on about how difficult this baby was to have and it was her dream in life to be a mother, etc. and he's thinking this is so sweet. When she finally leaves, she excuses herself to change the baby's diaper and my husband says something to me about how angelic that baby was. So I had to burst his bubble and explain that it was a real baby/reborn, which is a type of doll that is painted to look/feel realistic. A lot of the women who collect these dolls treat them like real children and sort of live in delusion. I've seen a woman on an airplane breastfeeding one of her dolls after demanding that she be given a second seat for the car seat, which she didn't pay for or reserve, and screaming at the flight attendants for upsetting her baby. I was managing social media for a con in Texas that invited a ton of actors from Game of Thrones. My friends and I happened to have way too much beer, so we carried it around and offered some to the talent. Quite a few of the actors accepted, and we got to stand around with them drinking on the con floor on the last day, shooting the shit, and got as many pictures with them as we wanted for free. Because of that, some of them bought us drinks at the hotel bar too, once the con finished and everyone was waiting to leave for their flights. I have worked a few cons, MagFest, Boston Comic Con, and a few really small regional ones. Mostly in the artist's alley with my friend for both running the booth when she is gone and keeping her entertained. MagFest is my favorite/least favorite simultaneously. It is the best as it normally can pull some pretty interesting people and those people are super interesting to see/talk to. The worst is a grand majority of the goers are the most unwashed filthy neckbeards I have ever seen and smelled. It has evolved into a bingo card we fill out, and the loser has to hoof it to Potbellas for the dinner run. Group of 2 or more guys both buying DACA cases. Person in cosplay way too good for this con. Low rent furry ma'am. Why did you bring your kids? Here are some of the spots we put in on our cards. The best story is one I heard on the grapevine from a friend we see each year there. This friend's friend went with her boyfriend to the con and the boyfriend spent pretty much the entire weekend in the conference room set aside for Magic the Gathering. This was probably 2012-ish, as it was before they started having bigger tournaments and qualifiers at the convention, so it was quarantined to that singular room. Anyway, he spent all weekend in this room. Made constant plans to go to panels with her, or take her to the National Harbor Marina to walk around, and get dinner at one of the nice places to eat, or whatever. Each time left her hanging as he stayed in the room playing cards. It eventually came to light that he has also spent $400, his con and food money, entirely on buying packs to open. This I can believe, as when I did a walk through the room to stretch my legs I saw a 55-gallon trash can filled to the top in wrappers. So he was texting her inconsistently about bumming some money from her so he could pay for the extremely overpriced hotel lobby food so he wouldn't have to actually leave the hotel and could play more. She is obviously pretty mad as this was both his idea to come to the con and had already broken promises of I won't ignore you and we will both go do things you want to do /see. So she ended up jumping from the room with her boyfriend, breaking up and moving to my friend's room Saturday night, and then Sunday night hooking up at an after party with a va who had a panel. This va being the only panel her boyfriend went to and for the specific reason of telling him about it after, so that va is ruined for him. Nerd drama folks. I have a friend who was staff at a small regional anime con for a number of years. Apparently 2 years ago at 4 in the morning Saturday night a staff member went to investigate a crowd that gathered on the stairs between the convention center and the attached hotel. Well, the group disperses once staff shows up, and it turns out 2 girls and 4 guys were having a blowjob competition. I was presenting a game at E3 a couple years ago and went to man one of our displays to give the girl running demos a break and not 30 seconds after she left the very next person to come over and ask to play was Dan Basco, Rufio. The girl was so salty when she found out. Guarding Bruce Campbell's store at E3. I worked for THQ Games like 12 or 13 years ago and at that time we had just announced the first Evil Dead game. So I'm at E3 and get selected for the guard this motherfucking door with your life. If anyone from press gets in, you're fired position. Turns out BC is our booth guest that year and he's behind that door. I'm standing there for probably 10 minutes. Then there's a knock behind me. I made a quick look to make sure one of my co-workers or a press member isn't messing with me. All clear. I ask a nearby co-worker to watch the door. I knock back and tell him it's THQ staff security entering. I open up and there's BC looking at me, lightly jostling his glass and says, "Hey buddy, can a guy get some ice around here, or what?" With a big smile on my face, I apologize, grab his glass, and tell him I'll be right back. Knowing I can't leave my post I exit and tell one of my co-workers to please get ice. He gets the ice while I'm waiting outside. A minute later, the ice arrives and I go back in. I told him I'm a big fan. Love the Evil Dead movies and such. Clearly he's heard it a bazillion times by his reaction. Aha, groovy. And goes about his business. A minute passes and he says to me, "So when are going to ask me for the picture?" Sweet. I asked if it's okay. Obviously he says yes. I get the co-worker who was watching the door to come in so he can take the picture. He in turn gets another co-worker to watch the door for him so he can take the picture. As he's about to take the picture, BC says, "Okay, doing Elvis in 3.2.1 and all my dumbass can come up with is this. Have to post the Imgur link later, but it's a dumb smile and my shoulders hunched forward." BC pats me on the back. I shake his hand and tell him to knock if he needs anything at all. I leave, close the door, and there's my team lead looking pissed off because I, assumingly, asked BC for a picture and why I had to take 2 staff members from their posts. He wasn't happy, but fuck it, I got a pic with the man. His personality was totally polite, but slightly stuffy because, well shit, because he's fucking Bruce Campbell. I think he was just fun with it all. The coolest guy I've ever met. Security working these events. The amount of people who bring in weapons. Real ones. No sir, you can't paint the tip of a real firearm orange. No sir, it doesn't matter if it isn't loaded. No sir, I can't allow you re-entry. I was bartending in Indianapolis during Gen Con back in 2011. I was walking downtown before a shift and popped over to the liquor store on Pennsylvania. A group of madrigal performers, bards, I assume that's the correct term, were making their way over to Scotty's brew house to have a bite, instruments in hand, and I saw one of the scraggly dudes who hits people up for change walking briskly in their direction. I sped up, cause I was worried he was gonna make a run on these poor guys. When he got close, he yelled, at the top of his lungs, "Hey pirate mans. Oh no pussy got ya hooked," and started doing a little two-step in front of them. They were completely confused. I've never laughed so much in my life. Edited for, hopefully, correct terminology. Obligatory. I'm late to this thread intro. I helped a friend run a panel once, though this has nothing to do with that. At the local comicon, my friends and I absolutely love going to panels we think are going to be terrible. Being nerds ourselves, we love to see people go on stage and act out poorly written skits, or improv jokes, or cosplayers try to lip sync their favorite songs. So it was no surprise when one day we found ourselves sitting in a panel called Waifu Wars. The premise is that you choose your waifu, or husbando, and argue with someone else about why yours is superior. You get 5 minutes to establish your argument. About 10 minutes into the panel, my friend leans over to me and says, "Hey, I'm gonna argue for Stupicles from Rugrats." So he raises his hand and gets picked. His opponent is making legitimate arguments about some girl from Angel Beats. She has gorgeous white hair. She is a martial arts expert. I don't remember the rest, because they weren't particularly strong arguments. All the while my friend's points are along the lines of, Stupicles is a shapper shifter. Stupicles dresses like Spike Spiegel from Cowboy Bebop. Stupicles is a loving father and stayed up until 4 AM to make tea for Angelica when she was sick. He has a terribly fickle job because he wants to make his kids toys to play with and be happy. The crowd absolutely loves it, and when it comes time to vote, by applause volume, there is no question that Stupicles is the winner. The next kid that goes up chooses a neutron from Jimmy Neutron. And in a very lackluster rehash of my friend's arguments, though not funny / charming at all, barely manages to win his round. As the panel is coming to a close, the speakers announce that the final battle for the ultimate waifu is drawing near, and the fate will be determined by one 30-second lightning round between, you guessed it, Stupicles and Who Neutron. The copycat goes first and uses his 30 seconds to talk about how sexy Who Neutron is and make other jokes that don't really hit the mark, like I want to lick his perfect teeth. Anyway, then it's time for Stupicles' argument. The timer starts. My friend is saying absolutely nothing, staring down his opponent with an intensity I've never seen. The fire in his eyes looks straight through his doppelganger. Everyone is silent, except the judge, who eventually says 5 seconds left. It's felt like decades, but finally my friend opens his mouth and all he says is, "You stole my joke," and holds out the mic and fucking drops it like he was in a scene from 8 Mile. The room erupts with ooh and laughter and applause, and the copycat literally storms out of the room. My friend jumps onto a chair and starts chanting USA, 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 and the crowd joins him. I know the end to that seems like it went overboard or was fiction, but it definitely wasn't. I think I have a picture of him on the chair somewhere. These are the exact reasons we go to conventions, and we always have a hell of a good time. PHXCC 2015 we will never forget.